this
All
is
right.
what I gave him.
Good evening. I would like to go ahead and call to order this regular city council meeting for Monday, April 28th, 2025, 6 p.m. Could we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Holly, will you call the roll, please?
Ludwig.
Here.
Haynes.
Yes.
Jenkins.
Here.
Van Allsburg.
Here.
Rhines.
Here.
Gilroy.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Thank you. I am looking for approval of this evening's agenda unless there are changes that need to be noted.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Do I have support?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we have an opportunity for audience participation with a maximum of 5 minutes per presentation. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to come forward at this time. All right, moving on. We have our council meeting minutes of April 14th, 2025. I'm looking for approval unless there are changes that need to be noted.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Terry, you had an opportunity to review accounts payable for this evening.
I did. I had one question, John had a good answer, and I've used Quicken since like 30 years or so, a long time. So I do my budget at the end of the month, and my question is always, gosh, where'd all that money go? So this is a quick summary for you, it won't take very long at all. So the total was 105,000, but the government pass-through was 35,000. So that's about 30%, a little bit more, 35% of the money we took in was just passed on to other governmental units, okay? Of the remaining 71,000, about 20,000 of that, which is about 27% of what we had left, was used to fix sidewalks, which is something we should be doing as a city, I think. So that's a good thing. Another 26,000, which is about 37% of what's left, was used for utilities, which is to say electricity and heat and telephones. So this is all really valid and good stuff, okay?
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate that.
So I will make a motion?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Make a motion to approve checks 78,283 to 78,304 and ACH 1489 to 1516 for a total of $105,323.50.
Thank you, Terry, and I appreciate the detail for that. Any discussion? Any questions? Do I have support? Oh, John, thank you. Holly, will you call the roll, please?
Van Allsburg.
Yes.
Rhines.
Yes.
Gilroy.
Yes.
Ludwig.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Haynes.
Yes.
Jenkins.
Yes.
All right, excellent. Next on our agenda, we have the LEAP, which is the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. It's the Brownfield presentation, so if you could come and state your name, your purpose. I
Got
appreciate it.
printouts for everybody.
Oh, fabulous, thank you.
Richard NT with LEAP, the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. How are you? Happy to see everybody.
And as Richard's kind of handing out the presentations, and we'll also leave some copies for the audience if they would like any over in that corner. But we are, again, with the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. My name is Emma Bostwick. I'm the Vice President of Business Attraction. I've been with LEAP for about 4 years, and actually prior to doing that was actually in Richard's position that he is in here now. We're just here to give a quick overview essentially about Brownfield, answer any questions, and talk a little bit about what LEAP does and this overall project that we're talking a little bit about. I don't know who has control of the site, but I do thank you.
John, our driver.
Awesome. So LEAP, again, is the Economic Development Agency. It covers the Tri-County region. We're a nonprofit agency meant to help businesses and communities here in the area. We also have the county contract for services with Ingham County as part of essentially working with Williamston, a number of other agencies and public organizations as well. So we're really here at your community as well, if you will. Essentially, we really believe in the holistic mission of economic development, specifically people, places, and projects. We want to create livable, walkable environments that people want to be in. We want to create good, high-paying, good jobs, and we want to also make sure that we're supporting projects that are fit for the community and for the business. So this is just a quick overview about the brick and the mortar supporting our small businesses and also placemaking, housing, childcare, public transit that we all believe that is interconnected to everything. This just kind of goes over the same thing as I did. Thank you, John. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Richard to give just a high-level overview about Brownfield TIF, and then we'll also leave some time for questions at the end if anybody has anything. So I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. So again, this slide really is just some direct language from the statute around brownfields, what they're allowed to do per the statute as of Public Act 381 of 1996. I was 2 at the time, but it's super cool to have reference for these documents. We can go ahead and kick on forward. This is a quick breakthrough just to break up some of the words. It's kind of wordy, but really just outlines that, again, as I'm sure some of you are familiar, as there's TIFs here, it's to help cover additional costs associated with redeveloping a brownfield, blighted, underutilized, contaminated properties. And so we can kick forward through this one as well. This is probably my favorite graphic. There's a number of them out online, but it really just shows that during the duration of the TIF, the base taxes are going to be paid by the owner of the property, and the realization of those new taxes are going to be after the brownfield plan. So as I'm sure you've seen in the updated TIF table, the proposal for this project is an 11-year plan that has all of the redevelopment costs being reimbursed on the developer side, as well as any revolving fund information going up to the county, along with the pass-through to local jurisdictions. So we can kick right through this as well. Super high level again, but what's eligible, mostly remediation activities and things related to due diligence for environmentally blighted properties. So we can kick through this slide as well. Just wanted to highlight for everybody the process with Ingham County BRA. So with a few of the projects we have now, we're in the early stages where LEAP is contacted by the project manager, the developer, whoever's going to be the point person, reaching out to us and saying, we have an application we'd like to submit, here's the fee, and then we kind of kick the wheels, as they say, as we do in a draft meeting, and really just understand eligibility and public assistance throughout the process. The last slide really just kicks into the final stages of that work, gets into the public hearing dates, all of the things that LEAP will be doing to outreach here in the community and make sure everyone is in the same loop. So.
And I think maybe to explain the purpose of why we're here, obviously you've had a few presentations, but LEAP, as part of our contract for work with Ingham County, is here to support the Brownfield Authority and essentially also you. And so that looks like a different couple ways. For context, Ingham County does have a public board that they appoint public body members to and meet for administering brownfield plans. And LEAP is the consultant, or I guess you could say the contractor, working on behalf of the county to help make sure that those accurately happen. For context, we've done brownfield plans all across the region, but specifically within Ingham County, you may remember Claiborne's and Mason. That was a brownfield plan. It had some fire damage actually, and so it helped both the city and the local developer, who was Claiborne's, to help get that building up and going again. There's also been housing, brownfield addressed things like Ingham County Land Bank had the Rio Gateway apartments that are downtown. So there's a number of different projects or programs that this brownfield can be utilized. The one that's being presented to you is specific to remediation efforts. We know that former gas stations, even left in the 70s and the 80s, often have remnants that they leave permanently, and so part of the program under Eagle and broadly speaking is to help address those. Otherwise, frankly, they leave and are in the ground. A lot of times when LEAP's working with developers, they have the option to do a greenfield site, right? That's something that means that the property hasn't been touched or contaminated by, and those are often cheaper, frankly. So we always want to give special attention to developers that might be looking for a brownfield, because there is an added cost to working in that type of environment. And so we can go further into explaining kind of brownfield eligible expenses, but as Richard mentioned, the TIF plan is 11 years. It is administered through the county. I know that sometimes there's questions about what's the difference between the local and the county. The county is just here because it exists when there isn't a local one ultimately. And so what we know from that is we are here to provide that as a resource, but it's completely, again, at the community's will. What Ingham County Brownfield Authority likes to see is essentially support from the local community. And that's what I think the ask is throughout this time at the board's will, is that support for that project to move forward with the formal application and formal approval that goes all the way up from Ingham County Brownfield Authority to Ingham County Board of Commissioners. So that will conclude our presentations, and John, I don't know what would be appropriate if you want us to answer any questions or any comments that folks have?
I think maybe I don't mean to speak for our bosses, but I'm gonna do it. I think the question is the timing for when this board has to make a decision on the plan.
Sure. So ideally, the county has now officially received the application. That is the formal trigger process for it. And this means that it begins an evaluation thoroughly of over a 200-page work plan essentially that goes through the eligible costs, remediation efforts, etc., thorough investigation of the TIF table, and as a result often produces a bunch of different public meetings held both at the brownfield level from county finances to county services all the way up to Ingham County Board of Commissioners. There's a public hearing process as well. So what this means and what this looks like is that often the county board, before they officially vote on a plan, is to have some level of indication from the local community that they're supportive of the project. Right now, that track of schedule is looking at end of May. So I would suggest if there were to be a vote, it would be prior to the end of May, if that was something that the board wished to do.
John, would that come in the form of a resolution then?
Well, I think that kind of gets back to, the ultimate question is, the first step would be an advisory resolution saying that we support the plan and concept or not. That would be the first step?
Yes, the recommendation that the plan proceed.
Okay.
Yep, ultimately, just again for everybody's disclosure, that because it's administered by the Ingham County, the agreement is between Ingham County and the developer through their attorneys and such. But it's ultimately at the basis of what has been projected. Here,
Right. And then I think just for clarity purposes, because that agreement is between the county and the project, the development,
Absolutely.
the city of Williamston has no financial responsibility in it.
That's correct.
Okay, I just
Yep.
wanted to make sure
Yep,
that
that
was
is
clear
what
for
is
our council
covered
members,
under-
but you're looking for that letter of support, that resolution that says we are on board with the project.
You got it, yep.
All right.
Yep, that's why you essentially work with LEAP through Ingham County,
Right.
so that that burden doesn't fall on you to
Correct.
administer a brownfield plan for 11 years. We got it.
All right. Any other questions? Dan, you look like you might have one.
So it's administered, you guys have the brownfield plan and the brownfield board, but, so basically, if I understand this correctly, our treasurer would collect the taxes as normally collected, it comes up to the county, and then the redistribution or redisbursement comes back through you guys for that 11 years?
Correct,
Okay.
yep, so it's approved, whatever the local reported taxes are, then the Ingham County Treasurer, Alan Fox, would step in presumably, or his team member, would be to help us work with what the actual reimbursement is based on that taxable value. And that would occur regularly. For example, Mr. Alan Fox attends all of our Ingham County Brownfield meetings. So he is pretty much in lockstep with us on any plans that are put through.
So, like, I know when this was presented a month or so ago, there was discussion of possible early ending of a plan or different things like that. All that's handled through the county level, and we just hear about it when it's done, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Basically.
we can provide you updates as regularly as you'd like to. That's really at your discretion. For context, the Brownfield Authority meets usually every other month. For a project like this, they'll probably hold a couple special meetings. All of those are publicly available for anyone to join on Zoom. So that's something that if you wanted to partake in that, you definitely could. We can also come back or provide updates administratively about where the process is, everything. But that's still, that overall process still does have to be approved by Ingham County Brownfield Authority. And there's a number of different boards above this one as well that they'll have to go through before it's, set in stone or established officially.
Okay. Anything else, Scott? Go ahead.
Yeah, so in terms of the toxicity that's there, you're familiar with it because you know it was there before.
Yes.
So there's zero chance that you'd be surprised, or if you're surprised, how is that?
I don't want to overspeak on something that's proprietary to the developer, but we do know from historical records, so they are working with an environmental firm. That's required as part of the process of working in a brownfield. But yes, there is obvious contamination based on prior use of it being a gas station.
And, I'm sorry, for our viewing audience, John, can you just clarify the name of the project, what this,
Yeah, sorry.
where this is
Thank
all
you.
stemming from?
Yeah, this is the Tailgaters project, which is the combined gas station, a convenience, grocery, and Dunkin' Donuts, and it's at right off the exit of 96.
Okay, great.
First property to the north,
Thank you.
the old Quality Dairy property, as it's called.
All right, thank you. Yes, Terry?
Just kind of a big picture thing, that ground out there is bad ground. We don't wanna just leave it there. You're gonna take it and you're gonna put it someplace else. Why is it okay to be over there and not over here?
Yeah, that's a great question. So all of that is handled within Eagle permitting requirements. So nothing is done without the approval or the check-in from Eagle on that side. So it depends on how contaminated the soil is. Again, I don't want to speak on behalf of the developer as they're still going over that broader analysis. But that is what the entire work plan is about, is remediation and where it goes and what happens after essentially something occurs. And so all of that is handled between the environmental consultant, the construction company, and thereafter with Eagle to ensure that everything is properly addressed, I guess is the best way to put it.
So they have handlers that dispose of it properly, the
Correct.
contaminants?
Yep, in alignment with Eagle's requirements,
Yes.
everything as such.
In general, where does it end up?
That's a great question. It depends on the construction company in general. I don't know if you want to speak to
I
it.
can,
Okay.
yeah. We did a similar project,
That's the guy.
yes, my name's Chris Haddad,
Hi.
and with the Tailgaters project.
Yes.
And we did a similar brownfield development plan 10 or to 15 years ago. And the soils that were removed from that site went to Granger, and then they use it to top off they use that dirt to top off where all of our trash from all of our communities go. And then there's a liner underneath all of that, and that's the landfill it goes to. It just doesn't go to somebody's place as fill, it goes right to the landfill.
Okay, good. A landfill could still be land.
Well,
How about that?
yeah.
Great, thank you, Terry, great question. Yes.
And then another, I think the big issue, the reason why this was an issue when it came up before was, we're looking at the numbers, and the numbers were, if I remember right, there was $400,000 to do the amelioration. The contractor would charge you guys $400,000 to do that. There was an additional $200,000 charge that went to LEAP. And I'd like to know what that is.
Yeah, that's a great question, and there is a new proposed tip table. I think that one was or maybe before we actually had an application, a formal application in place. Since then, that has changed. So, for example, it has shifted to those 11 years. The question about it going to LEAP, it actually goes back to a revolving loan fund that the Brownfield Authority manages. So that money is just redistributed back out to the community as part of it through the county. Correct. And so this new TIF table is proposed at a different amount in total. So what you saw a couple weeks ago actually extended the capture years. That has since changed in that sense that it's not, I think it was, half, 200,000 or something like that was last proposed. So this new TIF table is more reflective of what we're seeing. That all still has to be thoroughly evaluated through the application process, through the questions with the BRA. And then again, county finances, county services, and the Board of Commissioners.
If I could summarize that, I think it means that 200,000 was proposed to go into this revolving loan fund. So we're putting money into the loan fund so it can be loaned to other municipalities.
Not necessarily, it's projects all across the entire county, intentionally so. So as part of the structure as the Brownfield Authority for the county, that you all support through the Economic Development Services contract.
Where does that money go?
It can go,
So it usually goes towards other brownfield
Yep.
activities, other projects in that same area. So for example, other brownfield authorities have a mandatory 5% or X% that goes into a county revolving fund. So it's fairly standard to see that across other BRAs. The previous form was not including our county 5%. So Ingham County BRA sets theirs at 5%, and they say of the total capture of those improved revenues, the TIR, we only need 5% that needs to go to that revolving fund over the total life of the project. And how that gets done is based on the statute and the environmental firm's negotiation with the developer. That original one had, I believe it was 10 years of reimbursing the developer, And then the next 5 years was pure capture related to funding that loan revolving fund, which is where the 200,000 came up from. So since we've truncated the time frame from 15 to 11 years, the total available that's being captured has lowered from that 600 some odd thousand down closer to the 400,000 that's required to reimburse the developer, pay the admin fees, pay the minimum requirements for the loan revolving fund. So it was a preliminary number, right? So it wasn't necessarily something that they had officially submitted to us at the county. So
Okay, I would imagine you determine what that number is because you're the people receiving the money.
That's incorrect. That's the Brownfield Authority that's publicly
You don't
appointed.
represent the Brownfield Authority, you represent
We
Lee.
are the administrators
Yep.
for Lansing Economic Area.
Will there be another opportunity where they're gonna bring this all back and we're gonna see a full picture? John?
Yeah, we got the updated TIF table late in the day Wednesday, so we weren't able to get it in the packet. And
All
it
right.
is, they're correct, it is significantly lower than 200,000, but, I mean, we're not taking action on this tonight.
Right,
The questions are
exactly.
good, but,
Right, and we do need to move on because we
Correct.
have a budget work
We do.
session.
However,
So,
I would say this final thing, this is a really good draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very instructive.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask John to get that information out to the council, and then we know that this is gonna come back before us again.
right,
If you do have questions, I'm sorry, please address those with our city manager directly.
or
And-
feel free to just reach out to
Yes,
us. We can also meet virtually and talk about the same information that we can answer here and talk about any specific questions to this
Yeah.
project and tap into their team as
Or
needed.
invite you to a Brownfield Authority meeting. The next one is Friday, May 9th at 7:30.
Okay, great, thank you so much, and this
Thank
is
you.
gonna be a fabulous project. It's just, I wanna make sure that we
Sure.
give time to the rest of, the items that we do have on our agenda, so thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Richard and Emma.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris,
Thank
for
you.
being here, appreciate it, and we're excited about the project and look
Thank you.
forward to hearing more.
very good.
All right, council members, we have a presentation by the Farmers Market, the annual report. If you could come forward, state your names for us, and we're excited to have you here.
Okay, well, I'm Carol Granger, and Perry
Youngs,
Youngs,
market manager.
and he's our market manager, and if you could give them their presentation, please. There's only 4 slides, so I did not send a presentation packet to you ahead of time. And the presentation is inside of your annual report. I'm the president of Sow and Grow, and I wanted to explain the difference between Sow and Grow and the market.
Great, thank you.
And the mission statement is there. I'm not going to read it to you. It's a little hard for me to talk without my hands. Pardon? Thank you. So the vision for Sow and Grow is to meet the community's needs for healthy food and food for the soul. I'm just going to shorten it up there. But the market manager is part of Sow and Grow. He gives us information on how to run the market. Then we have committees, and then we have an advisory council, and we have an executive board. It's been a really great group to work with. How do we get our money? Because Sowing Growth is its own entity and it broke away from the city a few years ago, I'm going to tell you, the market does not support itself. The market survives on donations, grants, sponsorships, fundraisers, and then the Williamston market gets their money for the market manager payment, vendor fees. And so I just wanted to separate that out for you because we're the nonprofit organization that funds the programs. And so on the next page, we have a little bit about the market itself. But I wanted to tell you about Sowing Growth. Sowing Growth has 4 basic programs. There's children's programs. There's actually 2 of them, Seedlings and Sprouts, which is just crafts and activities. The other one is Power of Produce, which is called Pop Club. That's to teach children about nutrition and where their food comes from. And then the 4th one is Pop Plus, and that's for seniors. And we help the seniors by doing a gleaning project and give money and food to the the senior center. And then the fourth is our music and entertainment. And Scott Van Allsburg is part of that. He is our artist in resident. And then we have the music to help entertain and pull people into the market. And then I'll let Perry tell you about the market.
Hello there, my name is Perry Youngs. I've been in the market manager since August 11th last year, so I'm pretty new. I actually don't live in Williamston, I live in Grand Ledge, but it's a quick drive here. One thing the market sheet mentioned, one of the benefits we do is we also have a government assistance program. So we do the different one, we do SNAP program, we double up food bucks and EBT cards. And so people come there and can double up their purchases for up to $20. So we were advertising that. One of the other things we're looking at doing this year is also doing a mailer to bring more people into the marketplace. We're trying to do more of an understanding of building the experience of the market while trying to also build the customer base. We have the vendors. I mean, we had 28 vendors last year on average, and this year it looks like even more. In fact, we talked about even expanding a little bit further, maybe into the grass area some, just because we may have a situation where we have more vendors than we can handle. So the market is doing very well. It's just right now we're trying to get organized and we're trying to automate. My background is technology and marketing. I'm retired, but historically, I worked in Chicago and worked for Lee Corporation and Nielsen Marketing Research Company for years. And so I have a background in technology and marketing. So we're trying to apply some of that to automate things so we can have more high touch and with people and less time working through all the administrative work. And I think that has a benefit, even with the vendors, to get them more organized, to help them merchandise their products better. It helps the customer flow come in and encourages them to get repeat business. And it helps the city a lot to get that business in here. And other thing we're trying to do is tie more to your events in the city. We're trying to tie to some events, like I know there's one around the Halloween time frame that you're doing with wizards, and I haven't learned all that yet. There's another one around in December we're trying to package around too, maybe on December 7th. Either having our holiday market, which we have indoor at the senior center, or at the middle school like we had last year. So I guess, is there any questions you may have of the market that I could answer?
I think we're just excited for it to kick off this, in 2 weeks, and
Oh, this beginning date is Mother's Day.
May 11th.
May 11th.
Yes.
Yes.
So I think we're all excited. The nice weather that we're having, it just, gets everybody excited to be outside, and, we love the market. We, love to support, and having Scott on council and also being a part of market, he always brings us good information throughout the entire year of what's happening and what's going on, so.
I think it's only going to be a more positive future. I think this year we're kind of getting organized and trying to see what the future brings.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Yes, Terry.
Is this number correct? There's 12,232 people went to the market last year?
Yes,
Yes.
Wow.
yes. Plus the holiday market had another 300-400 above that.
Wow.
Yeah, so it averages 500 and something each time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's, I'm a numbers guy.
Me too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Terry.
The
Scott.
question that's important, do we know the distribution of the people versus being in Williamston and not in Williamston?
It hasn't been done much research in the past. My background is research. Hope to do more of that, understanding who's coming in. And we're trying to do some of the stuff associated with our social media too, with the Facebook. I'm doing Facebook too, and Instagram and so forth. We're trying to build ways of learning feedback at a loop so we can understand better our pull is and so forth. According to Facebook, I mean, the people going on there, it's 85% women. No surprise there for the farmers market. And I think it was like, 40% from the Williamsburg immediate area. We kind of pull from Williamsburg to probably the east side of Lansing. Not too much further than the east side of Lansing. We have a couple of vendors from Lansing, but generally that's kind of the marketplace.
All right. Thank you so much for being here this evening, both of you. We look forward to the opening
Thank you.
and all the exciting things. All right, next on our agenda, action items. We do not have any action items this evening, so we're going to jump right into our discussion items. It is very lengthy, but I do want to make sure that we give proper attention to those of the major importance, which is going to be our first item, which is our budget work session for the 2025-2026 fiscal year. I'm going to turn that over to our city manager, John Hanneman, and I'm sure our treasurer, Tom Mears, is going to be helping as well.
Thank you. I don't want to be accused of turbo-mating anybody's life with PowerPoint, so I actually cut this presentation down from about 20 slides to about 7, so hopefully you appreciate that. And we also, what's that?
Terry, we'll make you a printed
no, you're
bigger
not.
copy.
No, you're not. So, this is a standard slide we use every year. We talk about our budgetary themes, property taxes, personnel, capital improvements. Tonight, we're going to focus on general fund, major streets, local streets, and equipment. And the next meeting, we will cover everything else, which is DDA, TIFA, water, wastewater. So, again, pretty much expect the same operations and services this year. We do have some equipment replacement, and in the case of the leaf vacuum, a new purchase, something we've never had before. The bottom left, that speaks to utilities. We'll talk about that next time. And we'll be in the process of, we're almost done with the master plan. There will be a little bit of budgetary effort for that, as well as zoning ordinance revisions in the coming year. So property tax revenue, very simply put, the tax roll is growing from infill development and new builds, and stable, and is projected to rise for the coming fiscal year. Just our personnel and operational highlights. Staffing's the same. We're going to continue to use our contract for plan reviews and engineering. Actually, that was one of the questions Terry had about accounts payable this last time around. We do have our collective bargaining agreements that are good through the next fiscal year. Police is through 2028, and then DPW is through December 2026. We did change the organizational structure over there. We're getting better efficiency, and there's some budget things that I'll point out as we get into that. We do have increasing healthcare costs. We're also having, it's not a challenge because it's kind of the way of the world when you have to manage a healthcare system for employees, but the current plans that our employees have is no longer offered under the current carrier, so we'll be finding a plan that's comparable. So for capital improvements, the big ones, obviously we're going to be proposing to purchase a new patrol vehicle and the outfitting of that, and that's about $70,000. DPW and the equipment fund, placing a light duty pickup truck that's from 2010. We may still keep that vehicle around to do some minor things. And we are also proposing to acquire the leaf vacuum, which we've talked about that for a couple budget cycles now. Major construction projects, I'm going to skip the ones on the right because we'll talk about that at the next meeting. But we are planning, with budget approval, to do High Street from North Putnam to Cedar, and then do Mullet Street with double chip seal. So back to general fund balance, and we will get to the actual numbers, and this year we've done a comparison from current year to proposed year, which I think will be a lot more beneficial than going line by line, but we can certainly do that as well. We expect our fund balance to be approximately just under $2.7 million at the end of the fiscal year. The unassigned fund balance represents about 92% of expenditures, and our fund balance policy requires 30%, so we're doing great. Consider transfers for infrastructure projects, equipment, etc., sidewalk replacements, etc. We've done that in the current year that we're in, and we're planning to do that in the future budget year. So major streets, this is where that pretty large general fund transfer of $100,000, which allows us to do High Street and also miscellaneous repairs. We're increasing the local street general fund transfer from $60,000 in the current year to $90,000. Again, we're planning to do Mullet Street and then do miscellaneous repairs. While we're on this slide, there is legislation that has been, it's moved through the House that would potentially really increase our major and local street funding by a lot, but as you know, the challenge is we don't have one party in the House, Senate, and the governor's office. We have a split. House is controlled by one party, Senate by the other, and then the governor's another party. So, do I think that there's going to be something that's going to be meaningful and impactful in the coming year? No. I mean, that's just the way of the world, especially as we have a governor who's finishing up her term. So that's not an indictment on the governor, that's just the political system that we are in. And we rely on the state to pass through the money primarily from the gas tax for our major and local street funds. But all of that said, if any of that legislative reform takes place and the budget does come out in October, it means we'll get more money for major and local streets moving in future years. As I said earlier, this is the equipment fund. We'll be purchasing, with your approval, the leaf vacuum and then the DPW light duty truck, standard F-150 type pickup truck. So after we get through our, the more the fine detail, I mean, council has the, you've had the proposed budget line by line. We got that to you at the last council meeting. So certainly you review that independently, and if you have any questions of staff, contact myself or Mr. Mead. We will talk about our component units, that's TIFA, EDA, etc., and utilities at our next work session. And then we do have the public hearings on May 27th, which is the Tuesday after Memorial Day. And then we would have the budget and rates and etc. adopted on June 9th. So, kind of skip there. Tom put this slide together, it's good. This is actually a little bit of typo. Let's just say 26, so I'm going to cover that up with cursor. And it gives you an idea of where our general funds are appropriated. So, the largest 5% is police. What could be a little bit, maybe it seems understated, it says, wow, public works is only 2%. Public works encompasses parks and rec, tree service, buildings and grounds, and I believe that's all. So that's actually, heading towards 20% of what we do. And that would not include, anything in water or wastewater activity. So I think this is a good slide to share and also for the public to see where their general fund tax dollars are going. So good job, Tom, putting that together. So let me pause for a second if anybody has any questions while I struggle to rotate the screen. Okay, so just to give you a comparison, this is the current fiscal year that we're in. General fund revenues, just under $2.8 million. Projected that's going to be a little over $2.9 million in the coming fiscal year. And most of the budgets increased slightly. Sorry, council, we took a little bit of your money away for some reason. Not exactly sure what that is. I think it's for publications or something like that. But most of, like, manager, clerk, treasurer, most of these increases are modest increases in salary or benefits. Treasurer does have some uptick as far as technology. I do want to point out assessor. We had originally planned, we went through the RFP process last year, and we thought it would be about this amount, and actually the number came in closer to 30,000. So what we don't do, we don't hold numbers. I mean, that's kind of a trap that some local governments and state governments and federal governments fall into, that, wow, we budgeted 41,000 for the assessor, we only spent 30, but let's keep this number at 40. But we don't do that. I mean, all of our budgets, they're not zero-based budgeting. We don't start from zero every time. But if we know, like assessor, if we know it's going to be less, then we budget less. Same like planning. This is higher in the current year that we're in. We've had a number of site plans reviewed. They're also in the process of updating the master plan. They're not going to have as much effort in the coming fiscal year because the master plan will be mostly done. So that number's down a little bit. So year over year, again, one of the largest increases on a percent basis is the police department. Primary reason for that is, there's two really. That's the purchase of the additional police car, and then the possibility of moving towards a different policy platform that's called Lexipol, which there'll be some startup costs for that. So I'll pause for a second. Does anybody have any questions?
Go ahead, Steve.
Just a comment and a question. I was in state government for a long time, and I loathed every year when at the end of the fiscal year, they would say, oh geez, we're budgeted this much, we gotta go out and spend it. We had down in Jackson Prison, we had a businessman that bought $7,000 worth of toilet paper.
To spend up the money.
To spend the money. So I appreciate your approach, our approach to not doing that type of thing.
Yeah.
And then just a general question with these budgets going around, We lost Scott a couple of years ago, and we were going a different route because we thought we could do everything and save some funds. Have you had enough time to determine whether or not that worked out the way we thought it was going to?
Yeah, and really that'll be probably the most profound when we talk about utilities, because the way budgeting was done previously, the former engineer and then the GIS specialist were charged mostly to utilities, and so now they're not. And when those positions are no longer here, that was about a total of about $250,000 of salary and benefits. We did replace some of that when we did hire the operations superintendent for DPW. So roughly 40% of that we are paying because operationally we're better because we have more of a frontline supervisor to do the things that we need to do. But there is a cost savings because we didn't replace the GIS specialist, and also Mr. Schmidt's, his salary and benefits are not close to what the former engineers were. That's not a knock on the former engineer, it's just he's a lot, just doesn't cost as much. The other thing, from an engineering, and again, back to Terry had a question about, there was engineering review charges in the accounts payable, and that was from IMEG, and rather than having a full-time engineer whose hit to the budget was roughly $12,000 a month, now we have about $1,200 a month, give or take. And sometimes that'll be more depending on a project, but just from a everyday operations, and that those fees are based on site plan reviews. There was I think $1,200 in site plan reviews this time, and like $900 in general services for water and wastewater, because we do have a lot of things that we're planning to do. We're trying to prepare for our projects, and then also we do have the I&I study that we like to do. There isn't a lot of money that will be spent on that effort from the engineer, but we're saving quite a bit. We're basically saving 1.1 FTEs with the changes.
Yes.
I think it's comparable, what we do with VC3, instead of having an IT person on staff,
Yes.
we have VC3 as a
Right.
contractor.
Yes.
And I think this the engineering work and reviews and so forth, it's a similar kind of situation, we're saving good money.
One thing I do want to point out too, while we're on this slide, so this gets back to DPW. So traditionally, we were right around this number, right at just a little over 25,000. And again, DPW is all of these disciplines. It's tree service, Parks and Rec. The majority of it's spent on Parks and Rec. So this number's up about 40,000, but this is where Mr. Schmidt's wages, a big portion of his wages are charged here. And when we do get into water and wastewater, and I don't mind announcing this now, we're going to be able to forego a rate increase for both of those because of reconfiguring how some of the salaries were charged historically, and just getting more efficient and better at what we do, and making sure that we have a really good system of tracking hours and time for our operations employees. So we just further tightened that up and reevaluated that. It's something we do every year. So we're able to make sure that we're spending the money where we should by fund. So, but to kind of I guess summarize, so about 2.9 million in revenue coming for general fund, about 2.887 in expenditures as budgeted, which leaves a modest fund balance for the current fiscal year, which adds to our very healthy overall general fund balance. So, questions about general fund? So, as in streets, so major streets, and just does anybody need a quick refresher on what those might be? I don't mind telling you real quick. Lynn Road, North Putnam, a section of High, Church Street, more heavily traveled streets. It's actually a state designation, and we have a map that says what's what. The residential streets like Leisha or White or Williams, those are considered local streets. And there's significantly more money from the state for major streets than there are for local, and that's because they're traveled more. And so there's a whole formula for that. But the revenues for major streets, keep in mind, this does include in both years a general fund transfer, about $100,000. you can see we're spending on budget day, all of that, plus a little bit more, and that's based on some of the estimates that we got for High Street. Doesn't mean that's a commitment to, have a little bit of deficit funding for the fiscal year upcoming. We just wanted to make sure that we're covered as we head into construction season. So beginning fund balance there. This is where it does get a little tricky too with streets, because these fund balances do include the assets on an asset management schedule, correct? So this does not mean that there's $600,000 in cash sitting in the major street fund. It means all of our streets and curbs and et cetera add up on an asset schedule to that amount. So, yep.
Is Middle Street also a major street?
Middle Street is a major street,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Yeah, the section, yes, the easterly section of that, yes. Good question. So this does include us doing High Street, and then we do have, we have funds to operate, that's snow, winter maintenance, cold patching, things like that. So for local streets, as I said, you can see it's about 40% of what major is. This includes, a $90,000 transfer. We are planning to do Mullet Street with double chip seal. All those would have, we have to bid High Street and Mullet Street out as soon as the budget's approved, so we would do that. So, pretty good shape. Again, I'm an optimist. I know sometimes it's hard to believe, but I'm optimistic the state will figure something out for major and local streets, because that's somewhat of a nonpartisan issue. The last one I talk about this evening is the equipment fund. With equipment fund, again, this number is pretty big this time because we are asking for the leaf vac and the new DPW pickup truck. Tom, do you want to explain a little bit why police is charged separately for the police vehicle?
Yeah, best I can.
Yeah.
Traditionally, the general fund units are like, such as departments within the general fund, they will cover the cost of their expenses such as patrol, any big capital purchases, police cars, all their equipment, things like that are paid for in the general fund, which is one reason why when you looked at that graph earlier, the police department is so much larger, because that is also including a lot of their large capital purchases. Other funds, for the most part, DPW funds in particular, all the equipment's purchased through an equipment fund, and then that fund leases the equipment to, major street, local street, all the different funds, sewer, water, if necessary. And on some occasion, they may lease some of it back to the general fund. The DPW department's in the general fund, but police is just handled a little bit differently. That's just the way the accounting is, the way the GASBs are. It's expensed right through the police department. So.
Thank you. And that's not a scheme that we cooked up, over lunch one time. I mean, that's the GASB standards, the generally accepted. What's the GASB? Government Accepted Standards Bureau.
Governmental
Yeah.
Accounting Standards Board.
Yeah, that one. So, question.
Dan?
Oh, just a statement. It's basically, all the police equipment is used within the police department.
That's right.
So that's why it's all charged there. But the DPW things, parks and
throughout the
rec, streets, trees, whatever, it's all, and each one of those things gets charged a little bit, so then you have the money to buy the new one.
Exactly.
Should have asked you to.
I deal with it in my own way.
Yes, you do.
Oh, and the detail stuff, the detail of the numbers there, Parks and Rec, they're gonna have something for Christmas, Christmas decorations this year,
Okay,
which was almost nothing last year, it's gonna be good this year.
awesome.
That's a good thing.
Thank you.
So, that's a, high-level overview of those funds. And again, it's in response to, me being here. This is the fourth budget that I've been here for, and, always want to provide every detail that you have, but just feedback from council about not getting into the finer point of every last line item, although you have that. So if you have a question about something in particular, certainly be happy to answer that tonight for general funds or streets. Or if you think of it after tonight, certainly do ask us again between now and the next meeting, or even at the next meeting. All the while, we're marching towards the public hearing on the 27th of May, and then budget approval wouldn't be until the June 9th meeting.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, John?
And since we are talking about the upcoming budget, I'm assuming then the actual work will not begin until the last half of the year? For the streets?
Oh, no,
Yeah, that's a great question,
Great
yes.
question.
So we would not, and I don't wanna like confuse the public or the board, because we will have some, we are working on some local patches for asphalt. If you've seen like South Street, some of the areas around town, we've marked that up. That's coming from the current budget year that we're in. But as far as High Street or Mullet, those would not start until after July 1st. And then we'll have to make a decision, like, you know, with Spicer's guidance on whether we think we have enough time to get those done before school, or we wait until June of 2026. I think we'll have enough time to start and get them done because they're not overly complicated projects. But they will not start until after July 1st. Good question.
great, thank you. All right, that concludes our budget work session on our discussion items. Our next discussion item is going to be ordinance discussion, council review of all ordinances, elimination, addition, tweaking of existing, and what does city enforcement look like, continued procedure of being complaint driven. So this was requested by a council member, Councilman Haynes. And so I guess I would like an overview, City Manager Hannafin, of what this would look like, how we would proceed, go about it, or do we need to be more specific with what ordinances are in question?
Yeah, thank you. So we covered this a little bit at the visioning session, and you know, we didn't have a lot of discussion that night, but we did talk about you know, how we are a complaint-driven system, and we shared some examples. I can share some more recent examples. There was a homeowner who had put a piece of equipment in their driveway for quite a number of months, and so they got a letter saying, hey, you know, that type of vehicle is not allowed to be parked in a residential, in a driveway. It's different if you're using it, but they weren't. So they used it and they complied and they moved it. So that's kind of a success story as far as code enforcement. From time to time, folks will let us know about, we're pretty good at finding, you know, the mow the grass complaints. We do have an ordinance for that, and that's just our own eyes and ears being out there. Every once in a while, the PD will have a referral for something that they've seen that they think is more code enforcement than, you know, civil liability or criminal or something like that.
Did
So
the car you moved come from a complaint, or did you just notice that?
it was from a complaint.
It was from a complaint.
But something like that, I mean, if we do notice it, I mean, there was I'm not gonna mention the business, but there was a business in the west of town that we saw, many of us saw, and, you know, we didn't get any specific complaints from it. But we sent them an enforcement letter and they complied. They took care of the issue that they had to come in compliance. So, I mean, the ordinance book, Mr. Perone has the ordinance book there. It's, as you know, pretty deep and pretty broad. And so, from a staff's perspective, I mean, you know, we certainly take our feedback from the seven of you. And if there's something specific, if there's an area that you think we need to focus on, we can certainly do that. But
Sure.
just need a little bit more guidance.
Go ahead, Dan.
So, going back to code enforcement, we're mostly complaint driven, but we get some feedback when staff is around town or police are, and they see something that's major and that needs to be addressed. But let's say, going back to complaint driven, does the person complaining have to submit their name, or can complaints be anonymous?
They can certainly be anonymous because, I mean, when you talk about code enforcement things, they're, unless it's noise, and if it's a constant noise, then that's self-evident. But if somebody, for example, the most common complaint, probably other than grass, is vehicles parked either on front lawn or something like that. And we don't get a lot of those, but grass is probably by far the most. And if we see it, we'll write the letter. And we try as best we can to bring people in compliance. Sometimes we get to the point of having a certified letter or have police provide service to, we have a handful that are, not a handful, 2 or 3 that are more challenging in town, I'll leave it at that. But also one of the, and this is another like eyes and ears thing, and I'm the one who snatches your sign if it's put illegally in the easement. And there's, that happens, a lot of people do it. If I'm out and about and it's, not raining too hard, I don't mind a little bit of rain, I don't mind the snow, I'll just get out and take the sign. So,
Sure.
if it's a homeowner, we will notify the homeowner, but we have, typically it's people promoting their business. I mean, these are not the pinnacle of evil because they're trying to advertise their lawn care service or their painting business. We'll take the sign, we'll keep it here at the city for a couple days, and if no one comes to claim it, then we'll dispose of it.
Councilman Haynes, you originally had asked about this, and so I would like to get your input or comments, concerns, dialogue.
My concern basically boils down to I guess 2 major points. Why have an ordinance if it's not enforced? And then the second thing is it puts the onus on the reporting person. In other words, I never want to be that neighbor. And there's a couple council people that would back me up knowing I could be that neighbor for some ordinance enforcement. I just don't understand. I don't understand having a series of ordinances and it takes me diming out a neighbor to get it enforced. So, and just review. Do we need to tweak it? Do we actually need a, October 1 to April 1, snow on the, no parking, et cetera. Dumpsters, chickens, lights, noise, these types of things. Do we need them? Do they need to be tweaked? I would just like to see us have a project of taking 1 or 2 ordinances and reviewing them.
For what it's worth.
Okay, I want to make sure that we call in everybody, so I'll go with Terry first, Dan, I saw your hand, and then Scott.
So I borrowed your copy of the ordinances right there, and I read probably, maybe a half, in detail, and I scanned the rest of it, and it doesn't seem to me like it's excessively over-detailed or anything like that. It's kind of thick and all that, but there's a lot of stuff in there. There's parking and streets and lots of stuff in there. So for what, I don't think we have too many ordinances.
Yeah, I'm not saying number, quality.
All right, thank you, Dan.
Couple things, I think when we began the discussion, I think our ordinances are enforced. We've had, the former owners of the laundromat, before they could ever sell it, they had to come in compliance with a lot of zoning issues that they had. I think our ordinances are enforced. I don't think that there's a epidemic of code enforcement not being enforced. And as far as the general zoning code or the code of ordinances, the big book, that's a lot of ordinances we have. I think instead of going through the whole thing to see if we need it or if they all need to tweak, if we have a specific 1 or 2 that people think, oh, we need to look at that, I think that's option, but going cover to cover through the book, I think that's a lot of work for things that I'm not sure it's necessary.
Okay, Scott?
Yeah, of all the places you've worked, has it always been complaint driven?
No.
Okay, so then, in your opinion, if money was no object, would you opt for complaint driven or would you opt for something else?
I believe the system that we have now, it's not perfect, but it works well. I think that the alternative is spending the dollars to hire someone to do code enforcement as a job. It's not a full-time job, but that's a 10 to 20 hour a week thing, and it's not gonna, in my opinion, it won't bring any more conclusion to the the 2 or 3 major issues that we have by having that person. It just means that we're gonna have a lot more, we're gonna issue a lot more citations rather than just suggesting people come in compliance.
Sure.
And again, I can take my cues from the 70U. If you're, the community that we did when I worked in Royal Oak's a town of 60,000 people, you know, had obviously had a full-time code enforcement that was also partly building enforcement, but larger city, larger issues, more urban, so significantly more challenges. But you know, the budget there was in the hundreds of millions for the entire city. So.
I worked in East Lansing where it was, we had a code enforcement officer, and that was a very, East Lansing, as you know, is a very high student population, so they had code enforcement because of the amount of rentals they had. And so I can see both scenarios. I think with what we have here, I think leaving it as, I think leaving the code and letting it be complaint driven. I'd have to go back and ask for the data from staff. What are you, over a 12-month period, what complaints have you gotten from residents? Where does the majority of the complaints fall? You know, or when someone calls in and we issue a letter, and how long does it take for that resident to come into compliance before we have to go to those next steps or next extreme measures? You know, that book could sit there the way it is for the next 50 years, and we may get 3 people that call and complain about something. So I don't know necessarily if it's going through that book page by page, letter by letter to see what's enforceable, what's not. If nobody ever calls and complains about it, it's a piece of paper that sits in that book, right? Tim, go ahead.
So you said, John, you said the biggest thing is grass. So if the biggest thing is grass, there's no way to justify the cost of bringing somebody in at 10 to 20, whatever, hours a week.
Correct.
And so it's pretty much,
Yeah, and so I think I think it puts the responsibility back on a resident. Do you want to call and complain about your neighbor? And what's the validity of a complaint? And or is the neighbor approachable? And can you say, hey, the couch that's in the woods is not okay? You know, or the 2-foot tall grass, is that natural plantings, or is your lawn more broken, or can I come and mow your lawn for you? Something, you know, I mean, I think there's ways to try to figure out how to navigate around calling in complaints, unless it's something of an extreme situation. And I think when it comes to commercial businesses, yes, I think city, you handle it very well, and the specific ones that you've had to deal with. I know of one residential that took almost a year to come into compliance, but attorneys had to get involved. So, you know, there's certain extreme levels of it. I guess we would have to, you know, I'd like to see the data first of what complaints are coming in, how often are we getting phone calls, and is it really gonna warrant the time for us to go through and look at ordinances and figure out what should we keep in the book and what shouldn't.
I'd like to.
Steve, then you.
I concur with what appears to be the majority that we should stay with complaint-based. But I also agree with John. I think that we should take it upon ourselves to be responsible to review what is on the books and say, we need to tweak this, or we need to get rid of it because there has never been a complaint about it. Why do you have it? And I just think that we have our obligation, responsibility to know what those are and to review them periodically. And I'm volunteering to go through the first or the second half of the books, and she already went through the first half.
I can give you my book. Terry was a very good
She rents
steward.
it out
It's
30
like a
days
library
basically.
system. I can let you borrow the book if you'd like.
Right.
And if you
I'll
have
bring it to
difficulty
you.
falling asleep at night, it's great.
I
Dipping those cones and
I totally agree with you, and I'm perfectly willing to go through the whole book because I would like to see less stuff in there. I'm kind of in favor of letting people do what they want, basically, up within reason. And so if you got goofy things like, you know, whatever, like a fence, for example, it's supposed to be whatever fence high, what if it's an inch higher, that kind of stuff?
how about 4 chickens but no roosters?
That's okay.
I know it's people work. How do they come up with 4? Why no roosters?
That was probably a recommendation from somebody somewhere.
If you go measure a fence for an extra inch, you do a better life.
Two,
Right,
two,
exactly.
two,
Yes,
if I
John.
can, two quick things. I mean, it's Well, we do have a complaint-driven system, and we also, I mean, you know, I'm out and
Yes.
about all the time, and,
Yes.
you know, if we see it, or if we hear it, like a rooster or a turkey, then, you know, we don't need to,
Sure.
not all, I'm just off the top of my head, it's probably 50-50 as far as people calling in or us seeing it.
Sure.
And if you take out like yard signs, because that's, no one ever calls those in, because people don't know that's not against the code. So-
Right.
And the last thing, when chickens are outlaws, only outlaws have chickens, remember that.
How many do they have?
Dan, you wanted to make a comment really quick?
The only thing I was gonna say was having a dedicated code enforcement officer won't speed up any of those sticky situations that end up with the attorneys. It's still going to end up with attorneys, and it's still, this system is still gonna take just as long.
Oh, I have a
Yes.
question. Once you take it out of the book, then what?
Then you have to put it back
You
in,
gotta put
and
it
you have to
back
go
in,
through the whole
that's right.
process.
Oh,
So, I
So
mean,
be careful when you go through that.
I guess what I would ask is if we could do 12 months prior.
Sure.
Let's see what is being called in or what city is finding, because you guys do work orders, obviously.
Correct.
Or you have it documented.
Yep.
Let's take a look at the past 12 months, see what type of complaints have been called in or what the city is noticing. And let's start from there. And I will give you the book, and you can have so much fun, and you can call Terry, and you guys can chat. And if anybody else needs a book and they have not had the opportunity or pleasure to go through it, we can get you a copy. And we'll keep this on as a discussion item for future, and we'll come back to it. Right? Sound good?
Are we keeping it on as a like a rollover discussion item, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, let's keep it on as a rollover discussion item. That way we know that data is gonna come back to us from the city. We can look at those 12 months, and we'll take that next step. Next on our discussion item is the elimination of the $3 online City of Williamston property tax ACH payments, specifically only the ACH fee. An example, approaching current vendor to request waiving the fee. We do have a couple of documents here in our packet. I'm gonna go ahead and just turn this right back over to our city manager unless he wants to turn it over to the city treasurer. But we did have a request for this to be on here as to why do we charge a $3 fee? What can we do to possibly eliminate it? We've talked about this before in our council meetings, so it is in front of us again.
Good.
Yes.
Since I spurred this on, could I speak
Yes,
first?
absolutely,
and maybe, John or Tim can address it. If our vendor, if we approach the vendor, and it's the vendor I'm talking about, not the city of Williamston, if the vendor removes the 3% fee or the $3 fee, then we will not be in violation of rebating taxes. If the vendor removes the fee, it would potentially facilitate payment of the fee. If the vendor removes the fee, it indicates to our tax-paying citizens that we are looking at the small stuff. We're looking at the $3, we're looking at the gas, we're looking at the postage, we're looking at the time given to mailing in our taxes. If we have the fee eliminated by the vendor, it puts us on par with the state of Michigan and the IRS that does not charge an ACH fee. And finally, if the vendor will professionally remove the fee, it indicates to that vendor that we are somewhat professional and diligent in our negotiations with them, that we are the client, not vice versa. So those are my points.
Thank you,
for
John.
the fees.
And am I correct in what you just stated, that the state of Michigan and the IRS do not charge those vendor
Not
fees?
ACH.
Not ACH? Okay, I did not know that. All right,
So they're not rebating my taxes.
okay.
They charge for credit cards, et cetera.
All right, I'm gonna
Yeah.
turn it over to you, John.
Thank you. So Tom and Ann as deputy were kind enough to put together this chart for us, and just to kind of, if you want to look up top, the city also doesn't charge for ACH when it's a direct pull from a customer account. The $3 comes in when it's an e-check from the point and pay online system. Mr. Mead did reach out to our vendor and for point and pay, and they have to charge a small fee in order to provide the service. And the only way to not get the fee is to not have the service. So But there's a number of ways for our residents, whether it's cash at the window, check deposit in Dropbox, check by mail, ACH, or e-check from customers' online banking service to avoid the fees. All the other fees, credit cards, debit cards, etc., those are all third-party charges, and if the city is not a credit card processor, nor do I think that we want to hold people's credit card information. So that's how one can avoid the fees. When we get into property taxes, it's prohibited by the state, so you can't absorb, the rest of the taxpayers can't absorb one choosing to do this route and accrue a $3 or a 3% fee. It's not fair to the rest of the taxpayers, it's actually against the law. So, I don't have anything else to add other than Tom did reach out to the vendor and they said, well, we couldn't provide the service unless we charge a small fee. So,
Okay, thanks, Dan.
So we've discussed this a few different times. In the documentation here, we have 6 different ways that you can pay your taxes or city fees or utilities, any of these things, 6 different ways for both the city or the third party where you do not receive any type of fee. And then there's 4 ways where you can receive a third party fee. So we have lots of ways that you can pay these things without incurring any extra charge for any of this. If you're choosing to use one of the 4 ways, and some of those 6 ways do not include coming up here to pay it. There's 2 different ways on here to do an e-check. There's an authorized ACH where the city pulls it directly from your account. Different things like that where you still don't have to come in here and you do not receive this fee. No city resident wants to pay someone else's fees in their tax dollars when there's all these other ways that you can pay.
Tim?
I was just saying, go sit in Big B and watch the amount of people that come in and pay $3.47 for a cup of coffee, $7 for a ginseng tea with whatever, and then, I'm sure they can just skip a coffee in the morning when it comes to this fee. I pay the fee.
Sure.
It doesn't, the city does not benefit from it at all. Right, so, and I agree with that completely, you have a million ways to come and do this.
I think what it boils down to is it's a personal choice by the taxpayer how they want to pay their utilities, a charge from the city, their taxes. We have multiple methods. If we were stating that you could only pay by point and pay, then I could see where this is a bigger problem, bigger picture. I'd be interested to know what processing services state of Michigan and the IRS have that they're not charging a fee. Obviously, because we use BSA, point and pay is connected to BSA. Therefore, because we use BSA, that's why point and pay is there. But with the many different ways that residents can come in and pay whatever they need to pay to the city, there are options available where there is no additional fee charged. Go.
Just a question, with these various forms of payment, can we grab to see what the numbers are, what the percentage are of how many pay by window, cash, so we see.
I think we have that.
We have,
actually.
so currently for water and sewer, we have 589 accounts that are signed up for ACH payments. So that's roughly just a little bit under half of our utility customers choose to do that.
And then that other half chooses some other method.
Some other methods, correct. And then of our vendors that we have 651 vendors, but some of them are, could be like a single service vendor. But
Sure.
139 of them choose the ACH.
Sure.
And the ACH is one of the methods that has zero.
That's correct.
Do we know what the data is for how many people drop off checks in our Dropbox, by any chance?
We could look, we could probably
How
run
many
a
checks
report,
that are
it would be
taken in?
pretty close, yeah.
Okay. If we, I mean, I'm not asking for a 12-month breakdown, but maybe the last 2 or 3 pay cycles?
The only thing
What does that
that
look like?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
That's okay.
I'm thinking when we get mail in, obviously it's a check, and then people come through the door with a check. It may be hard for us in the report to distinguish whether it was a check through the mail or a check that
that's
walked
okay.
in, but we can get, I think, close.
All right,
How
and
about
I'm
just
gonna let
lump,
you wrap this up, John, sorry.
how about just lumping them in all together? Would that be easier to say 87%
Check payments.
Sure.
do us with no fee and there's whatever percent that would do the ACH?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let Councilman Haynes wrap this up.
Yeah, the point that I'm driving home is BSA is all our other stuff, correct?
There are
Why we
accounting
can't
stuff.
go to them and say, you know what would be a good idea for client relationship, that you waive this fee for us? Has that been done?
I think we've answered that like 5 times.
Yep.
We've asked them that question, and the vendor they use, Point and Pay, has to charge $3 because it's not a charity, it's not a nonprofit, it's a processing business. And so we've asked them that, and I don't know how else to explain that. And our option would be, if we want to get rid of that $3 fee, is not offer that.
Right. Because BSA uses Point Pay as their processing.
And I
And
would.
BSA is not gonna change their processor because we're asking.
And it implied previously that we should somehow get rid of our software system for, maybe it'd be worth considering if this was the only option to pay your bills. And frankly, as far as like accounting for the little stuff, I think that this is something we did in the last community I was in, and it wasn't without some pain from the ratepayers, but we no longer mailed statements out because the cost of postage and the cost of processing, everybody got an email for their bill. And then you could get a paper bill, but you would have to pay a processing fee.
Yep, a processing fee.
I'm not recommending we do that, I mean, that's kind of the story for another time, and
Right.
will be part of the utility budget discussion, so.
Tom?
If I can just clarify something real quick too, BSNA historically has not offered any kind of online payment. They therefore worked with a limited number of vendors that would do it for municipalities. Point and Pay being one, probably one of the largest ones historically, which is why we went with them. BSNA, however, is working now to unveil their own method of doing online pay, and that's something I do want to look at. I've already talked to them some. Whether the fees will be different, I don't know, but it's a possibility that we could look at a change and not have Point Pay going forward, and utilize the new program that BSNA is coming out with. But I think it's in the really early stages yet, so.
All right, Tim, you had one last
Yeah.
comment.
So if you go to the hardware store, Ace, and you use your debit card to pay for it, even if it's just a small thing, you are charged 40 cents more for your product at the hardware store. And so when I asked about that, I was told, well, I'm not paying it. Everybody has a processing fee, no matter what. If I take a credit card for my business, there's a processing fee at it. I don't waive it to the customer. I don't overcharge for it, but I have to pay the processing fee. So of course I put that onto the product.
Right.
So we're not gonna get rid of processing fees. This is not gonna happen, is it?
Just realize our product is tax payment. That's our product there.
Like I said, there's all those ways to pay without it. We're getting technical over a $3 charge, so I might not get my coffee in the morning. At Big Ben, I have to brew it myself. Oh my goodness. It's time to stop when you got all that to take care of and all that they can do. And plus, in this city, it's not a big city where you have to drive 50 miles to pay your bill. I gotta do a 3-minute walk if I wanna come in here and pay.
25.
Depends on where you live.
Yeah, I mean,
Depends on where you live.
I live a little further away than you do, though,
Yeah.
so that's good.
But you're faster runner.
But I'm gonna kind of tie this up with a little bow. We're gonna have some data come back to us. What we're seeing as far as how many people are using the Point and Pay, so we know what that looks like, how many people drop off checks roughly, pay in person, that type of thing, or it comes to us in the mail. So we can just get a little bit of data in front of us to see what is that whole $3 online ACH payment look like. But good dialogue, thank you so much. Construction project update, John.
Other than the patching projects I mentioned earlier, that we'll have something for council to hopefully approve at the next council meeting, I don't have anything to add.
All right, master plan update.
We do have a planning commission meeting next week. There are no site plans on the agenda, so we'll be making our way through the master plan goals and objectives, and also starting to put together language for such things as drive-throughs in the Williamston overlay district, buffering, improving the buffering standards between residential and commercial districts. Those are kind of the highlights of what we'll be covering next time.
All right, Maine for safety improvements. Any updates? Hi, Phil.
Hello.
Hi.
Quick one, we're making progress in the plans. Our hope is to submit this in May for a permit with MDOT sometime and get that machine started. I don't know where it'll go, but we'll take the first step and work it from there.
All right, great.
Just
Yes.
if you notice today, I mean, I believe this MDOT survey crews are doing the preliminary survey for the signal.
Yep.
That's, if anybody had any questions about that, just in case you get any calls from constituents that we don't want them to get too excited that we're closing the bridge. So.
All right, great. All right, moving along our agenda, correspondence received, information only. We have received correspondence from our Williamston Red Cedar Co-op. This is the Red Cedar Cooperative on Rowley Road, next to a parcel that is in the planning stages through Planning Commission for how many units, John?
It's 52.
52 units made up of quadplexes. Attorney Perone has read this letter with the voice of concern from the residents of the Red Cedar Co-op. This is in your packet as information only because this is at the Planning Commission stage. It is really in the Planning Commission's hands. If you have questions regarding this project, I would ask that you speak with City Manager Hannafin or our Planning Commission representative Tim Ludwig, and they can answer any questions for you regarding what this project is.
Is anything pertaining to that project gonna come to us?
John?
Per the statute, there's no requirement or provision to do that.
No, we don't approve anything
Okay.
at that point. Department head reports. John, right back to you.
I've burned your ears enough for the last hour and a half, so the only thing I'll say is, and the mayor was there, and Barb from our staff, the Lowen Gallery had their opening on Friday, and it was fantastic. It was really cool. A lot of folks there, really nice addition to downtown. So they've been working on that project for I think about 6 years, so it's nice to see it finally open.
All right. Chief, hi, how are you?
Yeah, good evening. Just a quick thing, couple things. Spring sports has started at the schools. Our officers attending those events. Recruit Madrano is on track to graduate from the police academy May 9th. May 12th he'll get sworn in and start patrol duties. Last week I facilitated a tabletop exercise down at NISA along with a bunch of stakeholders that showed up for the tabletop exercise. It was a very worthwhile exercise where we discussed some operational enhancements to keep our community safe.
Excellent.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you. And you got about another month and a half before school's out. How's everything
We
going
do.
with our traffic?
Everything goes going great. I have had one complaint about the Riverside and Highland intersection in the last few months, so.
Excellent, good, excellent. Well, you know, kids are very important in this community, so I appreciate all your efforts for those morning drop-offs, afternoon pickups. But it seems like, I mean, I personally haven't gotten any community members reaching out, and that's kind of a nice thing compared to previous years. So you guys are definitely doing something right over there. All right, next on our agenda, committee, subcommittee reports. Anybody have any meetings that they would like to report out on? Yes?
Had a TIP meeting last week, very, very short meeting. We directed to have the attorney start the modification of our plan.
Okay. Master plan or?
TIF amendments.
TIF amendments, okay, all right. Excellent, great. Anyone else? No? All right, audience participation. Yes, if you could come forward, please state your name and your address for our records.
I'm Robin Olin, my address is 1058 Foxborough. This is just kind of a basic question. When the cable and internet companies go through our subdivision and all the flags are put up, is there a time frame that they have to be done by?
I'm gonna refer that to our city manager, John Hannafin, as far as utility timeframes.
Well, I mean, typically, and that's a great question, typically we're required through the state of Michigan to mark underground utilities.
Right.
And there's no provision for them to be completed by, so.
Okay, because I live in Plymouth Landing,
Right.
and like this is the 4th year in a row that somebody has come through. But right now, I believe it's Frontier.
Right.
And they're not doing anything. So everybody still has all the flags that they're getting very irritated because nobody can cut their grass. So some people are cutting around them, some people are just tossing them. And so I was just wondering if there's any time frame that they have to be done by.
Their permits are pretty broad. I can reach out to their construction crews and see where they're at and give them a nudge. Last time I was in there was quite a bit of activity with the drill rigs, and there was a lot going on. So.
Oh, because now I don't get up to the front of this stuff too often, but I've only seen 2 days' work. But then too, it hasn't come back to where I'm at yet, but it's just very irritating.
Sure.
So I just wanted to see what was happening with that.
We appreciate it, and we'll try to get some answers for you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for being here this evening.
Mhm.
All right, council member comments. I'll start with Tim. All right, Scott.
Yeah, I just have a general comment on roads. I've been driving with Lansing a lot for medical reasons, and it seems like wherever I go, everyone's behind on the road, struggling with roads. And I don't know why that is, but it's not good.
Well, thank you. All right, Dan.
So, just want to say, I think it's good that we're having a lot of discussions about ordinances and different payments and all these different things, and that we're bringing things to the board meetings that we have questions about. But I also want us to remember that we have a really good staff, and the things that we throw at them, they're gonna do a great job with. But everything we send to them to do is an additional thing they have to do on top of all the things that they do on a regular basis. So as we continue on with these things, and I think it's good what we're doing, we need to keep that in mind as well, is that the extra burden with different reports and different things we want to send to them. We need to make sure that it's worthwhile things that we're tasking them.
Steve.
No.
Okay. Terry.
Okay.
John.
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment. I just didn't think it was appropriate with the brownfield development. I think there's an extraordinary amount of positives, but I think from a tax perspective, they're just brushing right through that. I think it's a little disingenuous when they say the taxes are going to be paid. Yes, but we won't see the benefit of that from a tax perspective for approximately 11 years. So we are giving a stamp of, from a tax perspective, we're giving a stamp of approval for a business 11 years from now and the viability of that business and so on. I just think, I feel a little bit of salesmanship going on with their presentation from that perspective. Backward splash, I think there are a lot of positives, but I don't want to be schmoozed, and I feel a little bit of schmooze there.
Sure.
So.
Absolutely. And I think that's a very, very good point. I do remember when they came in with their presentation that they said that it may not be that full amount of time, even though that they're anticipating 11 years. I think when they come back with that other presentation, that's something that we need to consider, and we need to take a hard look at that. And what does that tax window look like that we would not be, receiving, and see where that, where that information comes in at. I want to comment on what Dan just said. I absolutely love the conversations that we're having, because if we're not diving into these conversations, then that means that we're not really doing what the residents elected us to do. So anytime that we can get into good dialogue, and whether we 100% agree or whether we don't agree with each other as council members, we're getting good work done, and I absolutely believe that too, that yes, we do not want to overburden our staff. But our city manager is gonna push back when he needs to push back and let us know that if it's something too much that we're asking for, he's gonna let us know. So we do have to be reasonable with our requests, but in order to button up these discussion items, and move forward on them, I do think we need a little bit more information, to see if it's something that we need to actually move to an action item and take action on. But I appreciate everybody at this table, because again, if we were all to vote or be unanimous, then there may not really, we don't need to be here, because, you know, we're not really digging in and looking at what's best for our community, our residents, and our businesses. So I appreciate all of you and what you bring to the table. This was a long meeting, so that's gonna be it for my comments. It's a beautiful evening out. I do love the fact that we meet so much earlier on Monday evening, so that we can get out and actually enjoy, and we can enjoy what sunshine is left. And so with that, I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn at 7:30.
Oh, your first one, perfect.